This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
I'd like to call our November 14th meeting to order. We have a short agenda for tonight. Minutes from our regular meeting, October 17th. Everyone's had a chance to look at it, review it. Questions or comments?
Questions.
Sure.
I wasn't here last month, but I did watch the meeting on North Haven TV. Can I approve or not approve these minutes? Or do I have to be
no,
in
abstain.
my seat?
You have to abstain.
You have to abstain.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstained? We really have nothing on the old business, new business. Expenditures? Any questions?
Give me a second, Mike.
I think
Sure.
it's pretty much in alignment.
So the only thing I seen was central facilities. Did we buy page 7? We bought some furniture and stuff. What was this for?
I think that room you were just in.
Oh, that was, okay. It finally surfaced then, all right.
Yeah.
Anyway, we purchased new chairs in that room, so.
Yeah, I want one quick thing. IT, what are we, do we underestimate licenses? Because I see we encumbered more.
No, I think a bulk of it is, I want to say 10, 15,000 is additional work I'm having IT handle to make sure we're not going to get caught short.
Like backup kind of thing? You think
Backup, some patches, and just to make sure that we're current, because
Yeah.
I realized that some of the municipalities had problems with ransomware, and I said, I don't really want to get put in that position.
Yeah, you need to
So we're trying
stay
to
in.
make sure we're on top of it.
Okay,
So,
all right. Thank you.
On the medical insurance, are we just automatically making deductions based on our original appropriation? That is, would there be any variation in our monthly expenditure from any other cause or source at this time?
No, from the budget, all you should see is 1/12 going into the various medical funds. So you're gonna take 1/12 of the budget and transfer it to the medical insurance funds, and then the claims and other bills are paid out of there. Since we're doing it in-house.
Right, so any,
What do you think?
so any variation in expected claims then would just be accounted for at the end of the year?
No, if I ran a report on that, on the medical fund, the dental, or the prescription fund, you'd be able to see what's going on at any point in time.
I think the question, Ed, is we're flatlining this expense, right?
Correct.
But we have actual claims. What if they were to run more
Then
than
that
what
fund
we
would
budgeted?
end up running in a deficit.
Right, I
But
think that's
at this
what-
point, we're ahead of the game,
Okay.
so.
So are we going to get any updates on as to what the status of that account is throughout the year?
When we have our insurance meeting.
Yeah, maybe
we'll get an
quarterlies may
update.
not be a
Yeah.
bad idea.
Quarterly?
Yeah,
Okay.
that way
Well,
we can see what's
as of
tracking.
December then, the next one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying, Tim. You may speak on behalf of me at any time that you are correct.
Anything else on expenditures? Revenue?
Revenue. We did get revenue. One second.
Building fees look very healthy.
So our pilot, the pilot from the state, is that what came in? The actual pilot program?
Yes, that's actually it, yeah. I'd have to check with the assessor why it came in so high, but I really wasn't going to complain too much.
that's okay. If you miscalculated, just cash that check, please. And the MRSA bonded distribution, that's coming in small allotments instead of...
No, Mike, that was just
Oh, okay,
how much
yeah,
we spent. And I
right,
just
yes,
set
okay,
it aside.
yeah.
It comes in one check in Mayor's.
I got you, I apologize, I'm sorry.
Wire.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah, that's what somebody spent.
yeah, that's the way it's been happening, I apologize.
What was the access line, telephone access line?
We get a certain amount to each of the phone companies.
Yeah.
My memory.
I think there's like 7 or 8 different carriers that send us checks. It comes through the state.
Okay.
They tell us. It's their property tax.
Gotcha. Anything else on revenue? Special funds? And Board of Ed.
One second, I got to
Board of Ed just received?
Yeah.
Just got it.
I have a question on Board of Ed.
Okay?
Ed, you probably know the answer to this. I was watching the Board of Ed meeting on October 16th,
Right.
and Mr. Lathrop said there was a balance for FY17 of almost $92,000+. Is that correct?
Well, what?
Oops, am I in the wrong?
No. Well, what happened was when I did the year end, I took the numbers that I was given from over there, and I think we ended up with 11 or 12,000. This week, I think actually tomorrow afternoon, I'm having a meeting with the auditor and Frank, the interim Board of Ed business manager, to go over some of the encumbrances and changes they've made since then.
Okay.
So that may or may not be the same number when we're done.
All right, well,
But I think it'll be okay.
they talked about putting that amount in the capital fund for next
Yeah, so let me-
forward.
Pat, let me just comment on that.
Okay.
Whatever the number ends up to be, to your point, watching that meeting, it was in the 90,000 range. It may be less, as Ed described. Ed and I met with Frank Connolly and Bob Cronin yesterday. What they were talking about is that years ago here, what we implemented with the Board of Education was that if you have an annual budget, please don't spend it for the sake of spending it. Anytime you can deliver a surplus, we would put it away in the general fund and then give it back to you as a capital expenditure. So when Common Core came into play, Pat, they had a budget surplus of about $387,000. As part of Common Core a few years ago, we had to upgrade all the laptops to get into compliance, and they used the surplus that they generated by not spending the whole budget. We gave it back to them, and they bought the equipment and the computers.
Right, but also in this situation, I told them that I usually try to get that check cut by June 30th, and I says, we're way past that. So what I'm trying to work out with the auditors is it's okay if I just transfer the money to the health insurance fund, because it's always going to be needed there.
And that's a good point Ed makes,
Yes.
because we have to deal with the auditors on our side, and we have to make sure that we're working in accordance with the rules and regulations of the government.
Obviously, I'm probably speaking for Tim right now, but I could do that. The Board of Ed appears to have quite a problem in the transportation area with regard to what they believe they may encumber throughout the rest of this year. Those two accounts are showing deficit totaling over $600,000 in total. And I assume that they're going to straighten that out somehow. But that's a glaring situation on the budget they've given us tonight.
Isn't part of that transportation in a grant that's outside the budget?
Maybe the special ed part,
Yeah.
which is,
And
yeah.
are we anywhere with the review that we asked for?
No, because I haven't gotten anything back from Scott. I emailed them and left them a message, so.
I mean, if that is true, they could make an adjustment within their encumbrance lines, meaning that the regular budget will not be encumbered to that degree.
Yeah. Did we pull this from Eunice, or did they actually send it over?
They sent it over, yeah.
Well, we all know they're in transition mode still.
Yes.
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 I think one of the other things I've got to work with them, or they've got to work with us on, is just making sure they charge everything to the grant throughout the year and not just at the end of the year, because that's going to mess up all the budgets.
Yeah.
And this federal grant page, this is something we've never received before, I don't
Right,
believe.
I noticed that. We always got a spreadsheet.
I don't understand it, but hopefully we can get, do you have any detail as to what this is? Is this the breakdown of one of the grants? Or is this how the grant is spread throughout
Well, I think came
an
about
additional budget?
because I asked Frank for a grant worksheet, and being just here for a few months, this is all he was able to produce at this point.
Well, it is a little confusing because you got this one big negative 900 number, and it's kind of hard to understand what that is.
Understood.
I guess to Mike's point earlier, you can't really tell either on the transportation here whether this special ed is gross or net of any grant from the state. But the sum of the two was negative, is that they're, with the encumbrance, they're running 650 over. Yeah.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
And what I would tell them to do is have two lines, one for the expenditure and one for the offset.
Right.
So that we see a net number.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Whoever the new business manager may be.
Right, we need to get one.
Anything else on Board of Ed? Can I have a motion to accept?
I make that motion.
All in favor? Aye. Before we had the...
Abstain?
Abstain? You abstain from the reports?
From the reports? Oh, no.
Don't confuse
Okay.
us.
Sorry, she retracts that
I
abstention.
retract that.
Before we have our public comments, I had one thing, and then we can ask some other board members if they have any other comments or questions as it relates to our function. The one comment I wanted to make that, or to update the Board of Finance, Michael and I did complete that little workshop for fire with the chief, deputy chief, and finance director. We looked at a multitude of things from medical to dispatch, fire, volunteers and equipment, made some suggestions, put some rough dollars to what those implements would be, and we've sent it to the fire commission. Once the fire commission reviews it, hopefully they're going to bring those things up in light in the workshop. Policy is theirs. We can only make recommendations and suggestions to them. But we tried better to understand their procedures and their problems. The chief made a excellent presentation last year budget cycle. With the items we had to consider, we did not give him everything that he had in that. And Michael asked this little group to work with the chief to try and better understand their functions. I will say one thing that I realized during the course of this meeting is how much the entire administrative staff of the fire department has integrated, I think, the volunteers more than ever, both in their peer with paid and their training. And, you know, we don't tell you we appreciate things, but we can occasionally mention that we think you did something really nice there. And it's very noticeable. I've heard it from volunteers as well. Having said that, I really don't want to get into a lot of discussion about it. You have a packet as to what our recommendations were. I'm sure we're going to be talking about it in the workshop. I'd rather give the fire commission a chance to, since we all just got this today, it was just mailed out today, both to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the fire commission, since it is their jurisdiction and their responsibilities. We give them an opportunity to review it, think about it. And again, they can talk to us about it at any time they'd like, definitely in the workshop. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything or if that kind of covers where we
Well, at this time, yes, because this position paper, and that's really what it is. It's written by you and I. It represents, our point of view on what we saw, and what we'd like to see and how to economically improve it, and improve the fire and medical services. There are a couple observations that maybe I could just throw out now, and in terms of what we discovered along the way, because here, we ended up coming up with more than 27 recommendations, and not all of them cost dollars and cents. A lot of them are just suggestions on how to improve things like workflow, call flow, manpower allocations, and so forth. So, a lot of what's here, I hope, is further reviewed by the Fire Commission and the Fire Department administration, so that these issues can be discussed further. One of the things that I learned is that with regard to dispatch, that union, for some reason, is used to getting 1 day off every 17 days, and that's part of their contract. And I'm not sure exactly, whether it has to do strictly with the fact that they also have to cover for 7 days a week and not 5. But their shifting structure is a little hard to follow. So that's hard to understand. But our dispatch is sometimes hampered by taking too many routine phone calls that just come through the fire department during work hours, during regular hours, and after hours. And I think there's some solutions to reduce that or close to eliminate that.
And if I can interject, and some of those fall within our jurisdiction, with Ed just modifying some of the ways calls are handled so that they're dispatched extensions instead of going through police or dispatch for no reason.
Yeah.
And even,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the system, we talked about a little bit about the system, if it can handle the voicemail, or do we need to really look at a vendor to modify our phone system a little bit?
Yeah, the fire chief and the police chief and I are going to meet on that next week to discuss.
Yeah, that's an easy fix, and it's pretty much a zero cost. It's just a procedural type thing.
Okay, and another observation had to do with the volunteers, that we have 45 approximately, and that number is probably going to stay steady for the foreseeable future. There's a lot of factors that are in play there, and it's unfortunate. We thank the volunteers that do exist, and we hope to improve their situation through equipment or maybe through an increased tax abatement to show them that they're valued people within our community.
And if I can interject one more time, because you're making some great points, and one of the things, and hopefully that number doesn't stay static. I think with the training methods and the changes that have been made between career and volunteers, that might entice a little bit more people. The training facility might entice a few more people. And just as a general observation, it appears that while the numbers were higher in the past, the numbers that you have now appear to be very active participants. Where in the past there might have been some people that were more social than active. So there's still hope that it'll grow somewhat, but not anywhere near the number.
The startling thing that we learned, though, is that because of work and family obligations and so forth, if a call goes out for volunteers during the day, it seems that as little as 2 volunteers will only respond to a call for backup or a second alarm or anything of that sort. So it's that is a little concerning. My observation with regard to the American Medical Response, the AMR company, is that they are slightly inconsistent in their ability to respond in the way that we wish that they would respond. and that they carry no naloxone, none of the narcotic antagonist with them. Now, I know that, you know, we do respond with both police and medical and fire apparatus to most medical incidents ourselves, and we have that substance on every single response vehicle. So that should be reassuring to the public. On the fire department side, it was just unfortunate that the protective gear for the volunteers was becoming out of date, and we were not fully aware of that situation. But that's something that I think we'll look to remedy ASAP.
I agree with you. I think most board members were under the impression when we did that 3-year recurring capital expense, we were covering all the gear. But as the chief said, he's applied for a grant. And honestly, if that grant didn't come through, I think that by December they would know. Maybe that's where some of that set-aside money should go.
Yes, true. And the other item with the department itself is that Engine 1, which has gone through those two mechanical failures with regard to the engine, that seemed to not be the right purchase with regard to specifications or whatever our expectations were. So we have to review whatever happened there, because that engine is not fulfilling its design purpose. And I wonder if that could have been avoided. The only thing I'll say to wrap this up here is that through all these recommendations that are here, there's a lot of adjustments that and changes that we're asking the fire department staff to make. Well, not a lot, but a few, and we just encourage them through the union to try to help in finding ways to solve some of the issues that we found. And we hope that some of these suggested solutions that are within this report will be accommodated by all parties, including the union. And that's going to be an important part of the solution. But in the end, I just wanted to thank Chief Januszewski and Deputy Chief Marcus for their participation in this, because they were terrific, and they really helped us understand the problems. And I'm certain that they don't agree with all the contents of this report. At least there's a lot here that can be through compromise and through looking at all possible solutions. There's a lot here that will end up giving us a better and more responsive department as the town continues to grow.
Right, so let me close off by saying thank you to the committee. This fire department has done an outstanding job here in North Haven. Chief Paul Januszewski is outstanding, his command staff, his firefighters, and we really enjoy working with Chief Paul. But I want to reiterate something that Rich said. It's very, very important for the public to understand. In government, there's lines of responsibility. This committee is making recommendations. As Rich and Michael said, these recommendations are going to the Fire Commission. The Fire Commission is responsible for the policy of the fire department. So this committee is making recommendations, and the Fire Commission then will analyze those recommendations, and they have the right to agree or disagree with the recommendations. And that is what we're going to be looking for, the feedback from the Fire Department and the Fire Commission. I'm going to be very candid and blunt. If they disagree, they're the policy makers. They're going to come back to us with a recommendation. We're not going to get back and forth in a debate on this. They're going to look at it in a professional fashion. They're responsible for the policy. So I thank the committee, I thank the fire department, and I thank the commission. And thank you for being here, Pat, Mike, and Pete, as representation of the commission. You'll see the report, you'll read the report, and you'll come back to us with your recommendations. Thank you.
Any other board members have anything else? Public comment? We'll start with Ms. White.
Mary White, Summer Lane. Okay, so I understand about the recommendations going to the Fire Commission, and I agree with that. They are the policymakers. I understand that. It was stated that the recommendations would be discussed with the Fire Department and the Board of Finance at the workshop. So as we are all aware, public comment is not permitted at the budget workshops. So what I am having a little difficulty with is that the public is not being shown or given the opportunity to look at these recommendations. And it sounds like we're going to hear about them at a time when we're not allowed to have a comment on them. So I kind of feel like we're being shut out. So I'm wondering if there's something that can be done about that.
A lot of things that can be done about it. The comments or our suggestions can be easily made available to you.
How so?
Ask the finance director for a copy.
Okay.
And as far as your public comments to it, at the Fire Commission where they're making the decisions as to what they want to do, that's where I would suggest the public makes their comments. And the workshops, then the Board of Finance's responsibility to determine what the town can pay for.
Okay.
And you're correct, we do not do public comment. It's very important to me that no one starts drawing conclusions until everything is complete. There's multiple departments that ask us for things. I don't want people on this board to start in their mind committing to something before someone else maybe has a greater need, gets a chance to put their case forward.
I understand that. So all I have to do is just contact Ed
Yeah,
tomorrow?
Ed will give you a copy of it.
Okay.
I just didn't want to make it public before the people that are really involved with it have a chance to look at it.
I understand that. I just thought from listening, it sounded like the public would not really have an opportunity.
I might add, it's not on the agenda.
Oh, discussing it?
Yes.
Just under public comment? No,
Public comments are different. That's a
Yeah.
difference, right.
No, we wouldn't have discussed it under public comment here.
Yeah, I just wanted to have an opportunity
Okay.
to look at the recommendations, since I'm an advocate for the fire
I'm sure
department.
they'll make it available too.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. I got three people all at one side. Sherm first, and then we'll work back.
Sherman Cash, Sherwood Drive. Mike, you've been talking about the care, maintenance, and cost of the fields with an outside contractor. You're talking about $50,000 a year for Greenwood Wyman?
No, Vanacore Field.
Oh, Vanacore.
Right.
How often do you put that out to bid? If at all?
We have put it out to bid, and it's an interesting question because we went with the low bidder about 3 years ago, and we had more problems. The football coach was upset, the football players, the field worn out. We went back out to bid, and although we're paying a little bit more right now, the field has been in great shape. A good example sometimes, Sherman, how in government, low bids may not be the best quality, which would cost the town more in the long run.
I understand
So,
that.
I'd have to check because, what do you think, Ed, on that? Do we do it every year?
Well, no, we don't do it every year. I think we had maybe a 3-year contract
Yeah,
with an
that's
option
right.
to extend it a year,
Right.
or year by year, based
So-
on its performance.
Yes, thank you for that. So
You're
when the
talking about one field costing $50,000.
Yeah.
I think I want to discuss that with you at some point because I know what I pay for my lawn service on my piece of ground, and I have an approximate idea of the size of the football field. I can't see where you're spending $50,000 just for fertilizer and maintenance. But you're not cutting it. They're not cutting your grass. All they're doing is chemicals.
I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Plus they're lining fields.
They're doing a lot,
Yeah, they're doing a lot.
And they can't use regular chemicals, I'm sure, too.
Right.
I don't know what the number should be.
You
But
have a
it-
lawn service at your house.
No, I do myself.
Oh, okay.
have a problem paying for things, people to do things I can
All right,
do.
well, I just,
But we do go out to bid when the contract is like 6 months prior to ending.
yeah, I mean, we've been beat up before on things like this.
Right.
I did have my house painted because I just couldn't climb the ladder anymore. I really couldn't.
And that's all I'm going to talk about.
All right.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Sherm.
Yes. Jenny?
Jenny Caldwell. Just a quick thing back to the report. Given the fact it was discussed tonight, now it's...
In public comment, yes.
Yeah, it's up, it's open for the public to see. Is there a way, instead of people making individual requests, to just put it on the website? Because it is a public document at this point.
Well, as a courtesy, don't you want to at least wait till the fire committee?
Yeah,
we-
I mean, if you
But
want to wait a
once-
few days,
We
But
want the
according to
fire-
FOI, once it's discussed at the meeting, it's
no,
a
but
public
it's not on our
document.
agenda. We discussed it. It's only right to give the fire commission an opportunity to read it before everyone in the public reads it. That's one of the reasons we didn't discuss it and put it on the agenda for tonight.
But it was discussed tonight, even if it wasn't on the agenda. So, given the fact it was discussed, even though it wasn't on the agenda, it is still under FOI.
All right, contact the finance director and we'll give you a copy of it.
Okay. I was just hoping you put it on the website so that
We
everybody
can
can
put it on
see
the website maybe next week.
Okay. All right. And the other quick question I had, just when you were talking about the calls being routed during the day,
Those are internal calls, yeah.
are those, it's not calls that people are calling for help, it's
No,
just a
no, no,
call
no,
that...
no, it's just regular calls. They could be looking for records and it ends up going,
Or administrative.
or
It goes through
administrator,
the
and it ends up
dispatch or
going the
something like
wrong
that.
way. It should go right into records or, that
Okay.
would, it was simple changes that wouldn't affect anything.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Pat?
Pat Nezzolillo, Chairman of North Haven Fire Commission. First of all, thank you for taking the time and effort to put together the proposal. For Mary White, her question, the proposal will be analyzed by our Board of Fire Commission. It will be completely discussed at our next commission meeting on the 27th at 6 o'clock at the Northeast Fire Station. Any residents who wish to attend and make public comments to observe what our observations are, because obviously we haven't seen the recommendations as of this moment, are welcome to attend. But my expectation is we'll review that and come back to the first selectman with our recommendation. The expectation is that the $140,000 that's in play from this current budget is what is at stake at this moment. So we'll certainly look at it with that in mind. But certainly any residents are certainly welcome to attend our fire commission meeting to observe what's going on.
And Pat, thank you for that, because we try to encourage the residents to go to the commission meeting to address the issues. And you're very open. The commission's very open with the public on that.
Absolutely.
Many times people will come here and we almost want to redirect them back to the commission because, as we said earlier, the commission is the policy commission.
I think you said that clearly, Mike, that not only is our commission, but certainly all the other boards are in charge of their respective responsibilities. And certainly this commission or board is responsible to underwrite the cost of that. So thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you for your transparency on that issue. We appreciate
Absolutely,
it.
Mike.
Thank you. Mrs. Zuccarello?
I'm Mike Zuccarelli. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Fire Commission. I assume that these recommendations are being made to other departments as well? Public Works, Police, Board of Ed?
The only people we met with was fire.
Why? Can I
For this
ask why?
reason, Mike. The reason that this went to a committee, we put in this budget $140,000. I did that to allow a narrative to continue to see how we can spend that to augment the fire department. No other department had $140,000 that would have required or would have initiated a committee establishing any guidelines as to how the Board of Finance would recommend it being spent. So in other words, if next year the police department needs something and we're at a stalemate in a budget workshop or through the Board of Finance, we have the right to put $140,000 in that budget and then establish a committee to analyze and present to the police commission what the recommendations would be. So to answer your question, it's because earmarked was a separate $140,000 for the fire department.
Well, from what I've heard here, there's 25 different recommendations on how to improve the fire department. I was at the budget workshop last year, and the chief put a clinic on how the department operates and what it needs, and so forth. And I don't understand what 25 recommendations could be made to improve the fire department. He already laid it out for everybody what we need and how we're supposed to operate.
Michael,
Yes, sir.
if you look at some of the recommendations, some of them really don't directly impact procedures. They more are, such as the telephone, not letting it go through dispatch, adding dispatchers, maybe requiring your outside vendor to transport your personnel back if he's a ride-along in a paramedic situation, requiring them to do that if you get the PSAR. There's a lot of little things not directly related to specific policies, just some contractual things that might change and make things easier. In reality, the chief made a great presentation last year for a multitude of reasons. He didn't get everything he asked for. Michael wanted us and asked myself and Mike Hallian and the finance director to spend some more time with the chief, see if we can develop and learn more to help him meet his needs while we're still meeting our responsibilities to the town.
So one of the recommendations was adding dispatchers, I think, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an entirely different issue from, I mean, that's,
it ties to the fire department.
and the police.
Yeah, but it's more, again, I didn't want to go into details with it, but one of them was bringing triaging back into town. So I would, if you're welcome to call me at any time, we can talk about what we had, but maybe just breeze through it. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Well, I'm just concerned as to why we're singled out to have a special committee task force making recommendations on how this chief should be operating when we're operating efficiently on what we have now, but we can use more equipment, more people. But it just seems like it's the fire department all the time that gets, the eyeball.
Well, Mike, I guess from my perspective, and I wasn't involved in any of the workshops, but as was said here, I was here last year when the chief gave his presentation, and it was a very professional presentation. But honestly, I had a lot of questions. I think some of the other board members did too. So in my mind, this germinated out of the fact that we had a big request for, at the time was, I think, 16 firefighters, 8 over 2 years, right? And maybe it morphed into a direction that you don't agree with, but that's what I think happened, right? I mean, I guess for me, I know, in order to make a financial decision, I have to understand what's going on, okay? And I don't know that much about the fire department, and maybe we learned something. I just got the report myself. I barely read it, just like a lot of people in this room.
You're a step ahead of me.
What's that?
You're a step ahead of me.
Well, but I only got it really an hour. I got at the office at 4 o'clock, and so I mean, that's all I would say about it. I don't know that anyone singled out the department. I think Mike's comment was certainly worthwhile, but from my perspective, that sort of germinated from the budget meeting of last year.
So let me just also add this, Mike. And Paul and I have talked about this. In retrospect, maybe I shouldn't have put the $140,000 in the budget, which would have meant there'd be no committee to discuss this. So I'm going to have to think about this long and hard in the future, whether it's fire, police, public works, assigning money in a separate line item to discuss how we can spend it for the department that's not in the budget already. Do we establish a committee to do that in the future? I'm not really sure at this point, and I talked to the chief about that. Maybe it was the wrong approach. But to try to answer your question again, the only reason this committee was set up was to see how we can get the fire department an additional $140,000 by having Board of Finance members, the chief, and Ed part of the committee to discuss what are the options to spend the money that's not in the fire department budget. It's in a separate line item to see how we can give it to the fire department. That's the only reason this committee was set up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.